Hello, hello. Testing.
So
We're running.
we're so close.
Yep.
Nope. I don't have power. Does the hearing table have power?
Yes.
That one did have power.
Testing.
This one did.
Yeah, it did.
We do it so.
So can we
It's-
go?
It's a mess under there.
Can we get started?
You can't tell what's what.
Those three.
So I'll answer questions as best as I can, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you accept questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this bill? I thought so. Why don't you come on up?
Morning, Madam Chair, committee members, Steve Appleby, Department of Education. This bill, we currently conduct a criminal history record check upon initial licensure, and this bill would bring that check also to the renewal process for all educator licenses. As I mentioned in the House, we surveyed other states, and of the 27 responses we received, all 27 conduct criminal history record checks as a condition of renewal of a license. The current state is when an educator gets their initial license, now we conduct checks. We only added that a couple of years ago, so it's relatively new. The district also conducts a check upon employment, but if an individual never leaves a district, they don't have another check. So the second piece, which is adding neglect, currently we check the DCYF list for findings of abuse and neglect strictly for abuse. And adding neglect, again, our surrounding states are doing this, and we felt it was prudent to protect our students.
Questions?
Thank you.
Did you
Thank
have a-
Yes, a quick just.
Okay, Senator
question.
Prentice.
Thank you, Chair Ward, and Steve, good to see you this morning. Thank you for taking my question. So this is an FBI compliant background check.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Yes, it is. This is an FBI check.
So, I'm all supportive of this. So this is instead of just that one point in time in that one district, because you're only getting a snapshot of their history at that point, even though something else could have happened, because we are not a wrap back state, then you will know that they, that basically their record will pop.
Yes, that is
Or
correct.
actually pop is kind of the
Ev- Every,
something that's in there.
every 3 years, we get a look at the record. So,
Okay. And follow up? So as it is now, this would only happen if they move to a different district.
the current state is an employment-only check once they're licensed, and they only get checked if they move to a different district. So if they stay in Concord for 30 years, they don't get checked again.
This is good. Thank you. Perfect.
Now, Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Appleby, for taking my questions. What's the benefit in the Department of Education's opinion of adding neglect to the findings in line 21?
Yes, so very often, the DCYF list, findings of abuse and neglect, are individuals to keep them from being foster parents because they've been found either too abused or neglected, almost always their own children. And so we currently check for findings of abuse, but the consensus seems to be neglect. If you're neglecting your own child, do we want to trust you with other children who aren't even yours? So adding that, we think also would be prudent.
May I follow up?
Follow up?
So in adding abuse and neglect, does adding neglect open up another avenue to having to check into the Bureau of Elderly Affairs for neglect in that venue?
We have talked about that.
Without
We're not as
spe-
familiar with that. So right now, we're just checking that foster parent list, but we have had,
Sure.
we've had discussions around the elderly piece as well. So we may come back next year because this is strictly the DCYF list around foster parents.
Okay, may I follow up?
Follow up?
So forgive me here, RSA 169C is just for foster parents, not for kinship guardian of elderly as well.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking up right now, but, okay, if it's specified, then I can see adding that, but it might, if it's not, then adding an entire avenue that makes you have to go to another agency altogether could be
Right.
really
So
onerous.
if we were, so we currently, we go to HHS now and check that list. And we also have an MOU with the state of Massachusetts to check their list. And it's a fairly seamless process currently. And I don't think if we were to add in the next session, looking at elder issues as well, I don't think that that would be a big lift for us.
Last question, Madam Chair.
You fin-
Yeah, do we have MOUs with Maine and Vermont
Those are in process.
in process right now? Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all for your time.
Anybody else who wants to speak on 1795? Seeing none, this concludes the public hearing on House Bill 1795. The next one is House Bill 1818. And the prime sponsor is Representative Ladd.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I come from Haverhill, and I represent Haverhill, Benton, Bath, Piermont, Landaff, Warren as well. I'm here today to present HB 1818, as you mentioned. I'm not in that great a spirit today because all my March Madness bracket's been really busted. And, I was Florida, and of course, that's, you know, so there we go. But at any rate, this is a bill which, when it was initially introduced to the House by myself, it also included another portion in the bill which created a fund which would be available to school districts that have consolidation issues, such as we just saw recently over in Claremont, where they had a number of elementary schools, and they're now consolidating into lesser number. We have a number of districts within the state are doing it due to our demographics, due to affordability and all that. So we had put in there, working with the department, a fund to set aside $10 million, and being in the middle of a budget cycle here, or we're in the middle of a cycle, we deleted all reference to that particular part of the bill. But we left in the part that you now see. And both parts initially were put together by the department working with myself. The part that's in there right now deals with the issue of the capital improvement plans that all the districts are requested or recommended to have. And what this does, it changes that language to shall. And the reason why the department's asking that it be shall develop a 10-year plan, which recognizes those projects that they have on the tree for going into construction, reconstruction, new construction, or consolidation. We have to put together in the legislature here a budget and project out like we do with our 10-year highway plan. What's there? What are we going to need for finances and all to do this? Without having this review and done internally by the local districts, develop that capital plan and submit it into the department, it's very difficult for the department to gauge what they have to put into a budget for the purpose of capital construction. So we've changed the words, each district is encouraged to shall review and update this plan, which is submitted on a 2-year recurring basis or as needed. And so that's the major change within this. We also include in that part of the report that they're supposed to be looking at building consolidation issues that may come up. And when you do consolidate, for example, in the district I'm in right now in Haverhill, we've been dealing with a similar issue where we have a grade school, a middle school, and a high school with a shrinking population. And the consideration was, do we go with a K through 8 in the middle school, or do we break it down and have a K through 4 in the K through 3 building now and continue with grades 5 through 8 in the middle school? And it all came down to dollars and cents and what we can do most efficiently. And we ended up keeping what we have, but the majority of people in the committee recognized that we're maintaining now 3 buildings when in fact we could get by with 2 buildings and save these costs, whether it be staff going from one building to another to teach music or PE, or administration costs. So what this does, it requires the locals now to develop a plan, and they shall do it, and they shall look at on a 2-year recurring basis. If there's nothing done, if nothing's changed, they just have to let the department know nothing's changed to our plan. Thank you very much. That's the nature of the bill. And anything kind of a fiscal note that you might see in there, the fiscal note is gone. There's no cost to that. And then there was a healthy fiscal note in there, over $10 million initially. But that was for the first part that's all been deleted. So now we're just talking about changing this one aspect of the capital improvement plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Questions by committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim Carney.
Good morning. Tim Carney. I'm the Bureau Administrator for the Bureau of School Facilities for the department. And department leadership just asked me to come down and reiterate that in the fiscal note of the original, there was a position requested to support this component of the bill. And right now, the current bill or the current law, the department's unable to implement because we simply don't have the staff to do it. So although we do appreciate Representative Ladd's changing recommended to shall, under current staffing, this still will not be implemented by the department because we simply do not have the staff. And so that was part of the original fiscal note requesting that staff position. Any questions?
Okay, questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else who wants to speak on this bill? Seeing none, that concludes the public hearing on House Bill 1818. Let's see, time. Okay, we have the right time for House Bill 131. And you were introducing it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Noble is the prime sponsor of this bill, but she was unable to be here today. For the record, my name is Representative Freeman. I represent Belknap County District 8, the beautiful towns of Belmont, Samberton, and Tilton. I bring before you today House Bill 131. House Bill 131 deals with bullying and cyberbullying and establishing a program to address such issues. I'm not going to read through the amendment. It's lengthy, and I'm sure all of you, being well-versed and doing your homework, have read over the amendment to House Bill 131. These comments are from Representative Noble. She asked me to read them to you, and I will answer questions the best that I can. No child should feel unsafe in their school, and yet many do. Too many families still tell heartbreaking stories of bullying that went unaddressed. This has led to victims having their education negatively impacted, and some even having to leave their school altogether because the situation was not rectified by school leadership. This bill aims to improve those situations with stronger procedural safeguards, reporting requirements, and accountability. This bill requires that the procedure for reporting bullying, cyberbullying, or retaliation be included in the student handbook, requires that school officials notify parents of the victim of the measures being taken to ensure their child's safety and to prevent further acts of bullying, requires school officials to provide the victim with a written copy of their rights, protections, and supports available, requires districts to notify all parties of the reason for an investigation extension, requires collaboration of all districts if multiple districts are involved, adds a time frame to the waiver of notification, adds waivers, investigation extensions, and out-of-state cyberbullying cases reported to the AG to the bullying reporting, requires a mandatory conference on the effects of bullying with the perpetrator and their parents, requires disciplinary action for students who have been found to have engaged in harassment, intimidation, retaliation, or bullying, adds a violation of the educator code of conduct for violating requirements, submitting false information, or commits an act of retaliation against a reporter or a parent, modifies the definition of bullying to remove it, that it shall include actions motivated by an imbalance of power, but keeps the rest of the definition intact. And finally, lowers the liability standard from gross negligence to simple negligence. Schools should be held to the same reasonable standard of care we expect from every adult who cares for children. Again, I will answer your questions the best that I can.
Okay. Any questions by committee members? I don't see one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Ladd?
And again, for the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I represent Haverhill, Benton, Piermont, Warren, Landaff. And I was the original prime sponsor of the bill. It was originally a bill which dealt with the use of cell phones in the classroom. And it was, that portion of the bill was totally deleted, and this was added into the bill and replaced it. I'd like to go through the bill here as it's being presented and offer a few comments, because I do absolutely 100% support the intent we have to deal with bullying in our schools, and how we report it and how we deal with it as a school district, school, et cetera. On your bill, on first page, on line 10, it says, "The school board of each school district and the board of trustees of charter public schools shall no later than." So this bill is aimed at those school districts, school board of each district, and the board of trustees of the charter public school. It leaves off the public academies. The public academies are identified within statute as independent schools which contract with one or more school districts. They're not school districts. So my advice is that this be amended to include public academies, because we do have that type of institution within our state where we have the trustees, so those people are appointed in an independent school, which a public academy is. And we also tuition to public academies outside the state. So that's on line 10. So I would suggest that you look at RSA 194:23, Roman 2, which speaks to the public academies and the independent schools. That's 194:23, Roman 2. On page 2, on the first line there, a requirement that school staff members, coaches, and bus drivers report incidents of bullying to the school principal or other school personnel as outlined in district reporting requirements. That's good. Now, what I'm also now going to reference you to the latter part of this bill on lines, on page 3, on line 29. Where it says, "It shall be a violation of the educator code of conduct to intentionally violate the district internal reporting requirements, submit inaccurate or false information, fail to adhere to the timelines in this section, or commit an act of retaliation against a reporter of bullying or cyberbullying, or against a parent." If you look at the code of conduct, the code is pretty specific in terms of the staff members which it references. The code of conduct has a definition for educator. Educator means any professional employee of any school district whose position requires certification by the state board pursuant to RSA 189:39. Administrators, specialists, and teachers are included within the definition of this term. School bus drivers are not, supervisors of the bus drivers are not, cooks are not, paraprofessionals, maybe some are certified, most of them are not. Office staff are not certified. Volunteers are not certified. Contracted services providers oftentimes are coming in from an agency and they're not certified. And nurses have licensure, but they may not be certified as a teacher. And we also have college instructors that come down and do concurrent and dual enrollment. They're authorized to do that, but they're not certified as a teacher. So the code of conduct, we hope that they follow the code of conduct, but there can't be a result that you're going to be in violation of the code of conduct if you're not a certified individual. So I think going back to that first sentence I read on page 2, when you're talking about or other school personnel, you may want to say school principal or designee and have them explain that in their policy. Principal or designee is used 9 times throughout this legislation, 9 times. That's all you see. You don't see other school personnel anywhere else in this. But if we're going to have consequence being that of the code of conduct, then we're going to have to, there's a conflict here in that, unfortunately. I'm also concerned about on page 4, the number of out-of-state cyberbullying cases reported. Now, I just live right above an interstate governmental district, which we have, which is Orford and Fairleigh, Vermont. And the policies which govern and which go on are oftentimes policies that have been adopted and approved by the state of Vermont. So is this going to be applicable to that district? Is it going to be applicable to where you tuition students from Monroe to St. Johnsbury Academy? I think when we're talking about number of out-of-state cyberbullying cases reported, whether we're going to in fact get that information, seeing they're not going to be bound by this legislation. And lastly, I have a paper here which I received from Liz Brown, who's the attorney at DOE. I have 5 copies right here, if you'd like to distribute those. Referencing on page 4, I was over speaking with Liz Brown for about an hour and a half last week. Not on this, for example, but she handed this to me later on when she sent to the house late this weekend, because she's out of town this week, so she could not be here. Online, on page 4, lines 17 through 20, the purpose of this chapter, gross is crossed out and deleted. Negligence means, and deliberate indifference is deleted. The failure to behave with the level of care that a reasonable person would have exercised under the same circumstances. If you read the message that came in from Liz, and I'll read it. She says, Rick, I wasn't consulted on this one, and I'll be out of town next week and unable to attend the Senate hearing, so I wanted to flag this in writing. The bill as drafted defines negligence, but that term does not actually appear in the operative provisions of the law. The private right of action available to parents is predicated on gross negligence, which is a higher standard and not negligence. The law should define the term that triggers a parent's right of action. As currently written, the definition of negligence is surplusage. The law defines a term the law never uses, which gross negligence, the term that determines whether a parent can bring suit, is left undefined. Not sure why this amendment was made to strike the definition of gross negligence and replace it with negligence, but this makes the law more confusing. And when you look up gross negligence, and you oftentimes see terms like deliberate indifference, reckless disregard, severe, extreme indifference, and negligence, if you look at the matters of law which are most often litigated, the term negligence is litigated often. And due to the fact that it's not clearly defined, and it's one of those things, where is the boundary between gross and this and that? So I would recommend that this committee work with the attorney over at DOE and determine whether you want to go with it, it's, just negligence, or leave it as, as gross negligence. Other than those comments that I've made, I very much support the need for this type of action to occur. When Representative Cordelli and I were in policy together, this is an issue we saw between school districts, and there was always a fight between districts as to who is the one that's going to have to report it, who's going to handle it, who's going to deal with it. This does clarify that. However, I think there's a few areas which may need a little bit of work, but I hope that this bill can move forward with some amending language. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative. Nice to see you. You brought up page 2, line 2. So could other mean a guidance counselor? Is that perhaps, I mean, I know you didn't write this legislation, but would that sometimes be the first person that someone might go to, is the guidance counselor in the school?
It's like when I was a school principal for all those years, and we had to report child abuse and neglect. That's federal. And staff would oftentimes come to myself and say, hey, we'd like to report this. But the law says you have to report it to DCYF, the person that's observing this. Now, if we're going to have it reported here to another person, such as a guidance counselor, if you're going to have that hammer at the end that you're in violation of the code of ethics, a counselor is certified. They oftentimes go into a class, such as an art teacher does, a PE teacher, for what they call guidance. And it's an instructional class. And so they have that certification. So, when we're talking about trying to parallel what that code is saying, we just have to make sure that we're going to put language in there which ensures that I could report something to the coach. And the coach oftentimes is a person that's wonderful in basketball, but not certified. And that might be that other person, other personnel. But then what happens if that coach does nothing? There's no hammer there. So I think that you've got to have this reported to a person that is certified. And how you word that, or other school certified personnel, maybe, or to a person that's designated by the school principal. The word designated appears 9 other times in this legislation, as you see right there. It also appears for a superintendent or a designee. So that's how I would look at it, but I think it needs a little cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. On page 4, line 14, that's the private right of action section.
Yeah.
I understand there's a lot of legislation that's been coming around it, and they all seem to have a private right of action section in it, but for this particular policy, I mean, having a private right of action for, I guess, I think gross negligence would be a better policy. That's just me. But is it necessary? Is there a problem where schools cyberbullying being reported and they're just not doing anything about it?
I think there is a code of ethics too, which we've already adopted, and that's in statute. It's also in rule. It's this little book right here. And every staff member, when they get their licensure, and that they're handed this, and they've all been provided that. So the code of ethics is a very strong instrument we put in place. When I came down to the state from Alaska, where I had been a principal there for years, as well as over in Maine, I recognized we did not have a code of ethics or a code of conduct. And we wrote this in conjunction with a task force through DOE that worked with teachers in developing it. I think this is the tool right here that will take care of much of what we're trying to how we're going to deal with matters which are in conflict with the professionalism that's expected within this right here.
Follow up?
So for clarification, do we even need a private right of action section in this policy? Because if they're violating the code of ethics and it's clear as day, there's also.
If they're violating the code of ethics, then there's consequences that can go on, and there's 4 levels or so within the code of ethics conduct that you can, we use reprimand, suspend, take the ticket away from them. So we've looked at that, and I've worked with the the NAA as well here, I see Brian is here as well, to look at, is there some kind of a written statement which can be, can you have different levels of reprimand or suspension or just you've lost it? But I think that you're correct. I think you're on a path where we already have something in force, and now it's time to apply what we have. I would also pass it by the attorney over at DOE, who is excellent on this. And when I was just there talking with her for an hour and a half, she must have had 2 or 3 phone calls coming in with various issues. They're a very busy individual.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Kimberly Larkin. Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Ward, Chairwoman Ward, and members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Larkin. I am an Associate Dean of Students at Pinkerton Academy in Derry, New Hampshire. And I am here today to ask you to consider voting in opposition of the proposed legislation. I would like to offer some insight on the day-to-day workings of a school when addressing bullying and cyberbullying. As a high school administrator, I work directly with the students and the families, and I can share with you that these situations are rarely straightforward. Many times, situations happen through social media, on a group chat, not during the school day, after hours, late in the evening, but then they quickly affect the school environment the next school day, requiring our immediate response. These situations are often emotionally charged, involving multiple perspectives, incomplete information due to the lack of having access to the social media, and they cause a significant impact on the student's mental health. When we investigate, we often come across hurdles such as students that are absent that were somehow involved and we can't investigate with them. We have many students who we do interview who are basing their information on hearsay without any actual information. And then, as I already mentioned, the screenshots that have either been deleted by Snapchat automatically or by the student, or just a snippet of the screenshot that only shows one side, so we miss the true context. So we do our best to investigate these thoroughly, and when we go through our thorough investigation, many times we find that what was reported as bullying is later determined to be peer conflict, where both students hold responsibility to what has occurred. We work with families who understand, and we understand that they want answers. One of the most challenging challenges we face is balancing transparency with our legal obligations. While parents want to know what's going on, who's being consequenced, we're also bound by that student privacy law with things that we just cannot share with them. From a school-based perspective, addressing bullying is never a black and white process. Each situation requires careful and thorough investigation, thoughtful decision-making, and a balance between accountability and support. While consequences at times are definitely needed, most of our work is focused on education, skill building, and helping students understand the impact of their actions. In all situations, a thoughtful and thorough approach is critical. Where the accuracy of the investigation is important, we want to maintain the trust of the families, and ultimately, we want to see a positive outcome for the students. If bullying is to be addressed effectively at a broader level, policy must reflect the complexities and the realities schools are navigating every day. For these reasons, I respectfully encourage consideration of pausing pushing forward new bully legislation and focus on passing SB 575, the Commission to further study bullying and cyberbullying in schools. Acting school leaders recommend this commission include educators, school administrators, mental health professionals, and practitioners who directly are involved in this work. Their insight can help with the future policy can help so that the future policy decisions are informed, practicable, and responsive to the day-to-day realities faced by today's schools. Getting this right matters because these situations are complex, and our policies must be just as thoughtful as the work that is required to address them. New Hampshire school leaders would welcome the opportunity to both support and participate in this commission to study school bullying. I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lager, for taking my question. So at Pinkerton Academy, based on legislation that's passed previously, your students are not able to use cell phones in school during the school day. Is that correct?
It is correct that that is the policy and the law. I will be frank that we are struggling with that. And I think if you ask any school in the district or other districts, you will see that it is a law that students don't care to follow. So has it helped? I would say it has helped. But are we still struggling with the cell phones? 100%.
May I follow up?
Margot?
Thank you. So what I'm hearing you say and what I'm hearing from my own school districts is that the consequences of outside of school behavior is brought into school and then put into your purview to solve a problem that perhaps should be being addressed outside of school. So if we're talking about cyberbullying that happens outside of school, and then you're in the position of having to investigate and find, investigations are probably not something you're trained in at when you get your teaching degree. And now you've got to do an investigation with partial materials on something that happened outside of school grounds to try to deal with the aftermath. Do you think that perhaps there's no mention of the parental responsibility to be on top of children's phones that are supplied to these kids by their parents should be mentioned in this legislation or perhaps discussed in Senate Bill 575?
I strongly believe that that should be addressed somewhere. Oftentimes we let parents know that the phone is a direct result of what's going on in school. So we are obligated to investigate it because it is impacting the school day. But when we talk to parents about limiting or taking away that phone or even getting a flip phone, parents are very reluctant. They feel like that is their, I guess, way to be in touch with their child all the time. And we even have issues with that, with parents texting their kids during the school day. And so when I'm speaking with a student about why do you have your phone out? Well, my mom was texting me. So we still have that parent issue with the phones. I don't know if having it in a policy or a bill would help, but I will say that it is definitely a problem, the phones, both inside and out of school, that lead to issues.
Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for taking my question. For the definition of bullying or cyberbullying, it sounds like what at Pinkerton, they're doing beyond what this definition would require. Do you have any concerns about perhaps the narrow definition this has for cyberbullying?
I think I have to hear exactly what that says right now. Which one are you looking at?
So on page 1, definitions on lines 5 to 9, and particularly sections, lines 7 to 9, I thought from what your testimony was, it seems that you'll investigate a lot of, really any incident that comes before you, you're going to investigate.
Oh.
But this kind of narrows the definition of cyberbullying to, it has to interfere with a pupil's educational opportunities or substantially disrupt the orderly operations of the school, a school-sponsored activity or event. That's for stuff that occurs outside of, off the property.
Yeah, what I can speak to is that we are dealing with peer conflict daily, and to not address that would really cause things to end up being bullying. So it is important to us as a school to address the low-level behavior so that it does not increase.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So, the cell phones. I did not vote in favor of that bill because I always felt there was responsibility of the schools. And I would like to know, like you presented a situation, a scenario where you would say, why are you on your phone? In that moment, why, just to get more control of the situation, why aren't schools saying, that's against the rules, put the phone away, instead of asking why you're on the phone?
Well, I do say that. I remind them that it's the law. I remind them that it's school policy. I then take away their cell phone privileges where they have to bring it to my office for an extended period of time, and then I call home. Before it gets to me, the teachers are emailing the parents to say there's been issues with the phone in the classroom. So we are taking steps. We're not just saying, oh, why are you texting your parent? We take a stance.
Thank you.
Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward. Thank you for taking my question and coming and testifying today. Do you have experience with parents or other adults that have amplified bullying from, say, outside of the school into the school or directed it in any way?
I do have a situation where a parent had reported bullying before the school year started, so we were right on it when that student came to school. We actually went and visited the middle school before school started to kind of get an idea of what was happening. So we were on it. Very soon after, the parent sent another email saying there was bullying. We opened it in a bullying investigation. And my job, of course, was to do the letters where I'm telling the perpetrator and the victim that we have opened an investigation. Well, this kept happening over and over again, and it was unsubstantiated. It was really peer conflict. It was two kids going after each other, but the parent kept reporting it as bullying. And then it got to the point where I'm asking myself, when is this bullying of that family now? Because I keep writing these letters saying that I'm investigating a bullying against you. So things are amplified as soon as that word bullying is used, and often it is used loosely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm all set. No, thank you. Thank you, Chair Ward. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Kristen Perron?
Good morning, Chairwoman Ward and members of the committee. My name is Kristen Perrin. I'm an assistant principal at Oyster River High School in Durham, New Hampshire. Today, I'm here to testify on behalf of the New Hampshire Association of School Principals. I'm here as an administrator, but also a school leader who carries the daily responsibility of ensuring that every student that comes through the door feels safe, respected, and supported. I'm here to testify that the New Hampshire school leaders take the bullying and cyberbullying law with the utmost seriousness. There is a profound difference between the seriousness of an incident and the legal definition of bullying, however. In my daily operations, I receive numerous reports that come in already labeled as bullying. It is a heavy word that does carry deep emotional impacts on children. Our mandate is to investigate every report with efficacy and delicate care centered around the privacy of everybody that's involved. Often the investigations reveal a reality that is far more nuanced than just a single label. We frequently find ourselves navigating thin lines between three things: peer conflict, which is a mutual disagreement or unkind behavior, needing intervention but lacks the power imbalance or persistence which is required by law, harassment, incidents that may fall under Title IX or civil rights statutes rather than the bullying RSA, or the third thing, social emotional growing pains, which are behaviors that require discipline and education, but don't meet the legal threshold of the statute. Under the current law, we have a 48-hour window to determine if a report necessitates a formal bullying investigation. It is a remarkably tight turnaround. Oftentimes, we are working with minimal facts in the moment or the one-sided information. In those initial calls to parents, we have to balance transparency with the legal necessity of also protecting the integrity of the investigation and the privacy of those involved. The information gap causes a little bit of frustration for families. It's a gap that is born of our commitment, though, to the due process and privacy, not a lack of concern. The challenge we face today is not a lack of commitment or a flaw, or even a flaw in the current spirit of the law, or in the ways in which we report the outcomes. It is the need for proactive education for families, staff, and students regarding what bullying is and what it is not. Schools are not overlooking the concerns. We live them every single day. Rather than fundamentally altering the law, House Bill 131, I do recommend that we focus on creating opportunities to work with you and ensure that our schools remain safe havens for all students there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I welcome any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for taking my question. So in the 48-hour turnaround, what I'm hearing you, if I heard you correctly, did you say that when you receive a complaint or an assertion of bullying, you then have to figure out, start an investigation and get in touch with another set of parents plus the other student and discern whether it meets the criteria for actual bullying as defined, whether it's peer conflict, whether it's harassment and needs a Title IX referral or civil rights referral, or social emotional growing pains in 48 hours.
Yes, so I think when we receive that information, we do need to move promptly.
Sure.
And also work thoroughly, right? So everything is not always clear. We are given a number of situations, but I think having that window, because if it is determined that it will move to a bullying investigation, it is our obligation to notify within that 48-hour window. And so again, with the information, and again, that depends on if students are available for interviews or even the fact-finding steps to determine. There are some complexities within that 48-hour window that sometimes when we do call, what we're faced with is, even if we determine, yes, it is bullying, so we are notifying, at that time, we don't have all the information. So there are times where parents want to know, and legally we can't provide a lot of the other aspects of who's involved on the other end. So I can see that causes some frustration on the other side of the phone, and I understand that. But I do think it is a tight window for notification, just knowing in a school day how many students, witnesses, people that were reported that I may need to actually speak with to determine those steps appropriately.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Follow up?
So in the situation that you may encounter with cyberbullying, where something has happened on an app outside the bounds of the school day. And then, you know, part of the reason this kind of legislation is brought forward is that it bleeds into the school day and does create, occasionally creates disruption. With this legislation, are you comfortable with that the tool used to do the cyberbullying is most often, not always, but most often a cell phone, occasionally laptops, but most often a cell phone. And that tool has been provided by the parent, not the school. So we're not talking about a school-provided Chromebook. And you don't have any control over whether that parent allows that child to have a cell phone, encourages them to bring it to school, even though there are policies, or follows up and checks their phone. So does it seem like this might be an imbalance where your credentials are on the line when the tool being used is being provided without consequence?
I appreciate that question. So I think especially specific to cell phones and cyberbullying, and that being the tool that is oftentimes used, if we receive a report that it is impacting the student in the school day to any capacity, even involving co-curriculars and not necessarily the academic portion of the day, I put aside the cell phone as the tool, and our focus remains on the student and the impact that it is having on them. And so I do think there's a lot behind the cell phone, and I have to keep up with continuously knowing apps and the ins and the outs of it. That is a difficult thing for a parent to keep up with. I know it because I'm in the school and I work with students who show me how the apps work. But I think anytime, really regardless of why they had a phone or the parameters put in place at home, it is my obligation to the student to make sure they are safe in that building. And so I do think as a school, we do need to investigate those things if we see that impact, regardless of the tool or the timing that it was used, because we do want these kids to feel safe and supported and stop anything that could be occurring. But it certainly does raise some complexities to what we're seeing today with phones.
Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. So just reading through this the first time, I don't think, you know, without knowing every district's policy, it doesn't seem objectionable, but I guess it's really a tight, unflexible procedure that has to be followed. You know, there has to be a conference thereafter with the parents involved, even if it's been resolved, they're still doing it. I mean, I'm not sure of any, if you're aware, any districts that don't already have a policy, like where's, if you're hearing of that or that are ineffective? I mean, I know it's happening and there's been a lot of progress made, but is this too tight of a policy?
Well, and that is why I think in knowing the policies that exist within schools, the legal definition of bullying, right? I do feel like there are definitely areas that need to be focused on, but I think that's where my recommendation of really working together comes in, because we do know the ins and outs of the day. We know what those conversations look like with parents at the early stages. And so I think that's where it's really important for opportunities to exist with the committee to share that in order to move forward in the correct direction to support our students. But I will say, just with the supportive measures we put in at early stages for students, again, I think policies within schools, we follow those. We are thorough with what we do, but I do see a lot of what lands and what is on this paper. A lot of what we're being presented with does not meet that legal definition of bullying. And so I feel like that is where these conversations should continue to move forward in the right direction.
Thank you.
Seeing none. Thank you very much. Anne Marie Banfield.
So, good morning. For the record, Anne Marie Banfield, parent advocate
focused on excellence in education. According to StopBullying.gov, bullying is defined as unwanted aggressive behavior among school-age children that is repeated or has potential to be repeated over time and involves an imbalance of power. I have worked with parents going through this system, which is an absolute joke, to be honest with you. I am absolutely appalled at what some of these schools have done to these kids. Are we protecting an institution or are we protecting kids? Because that's the line. Because I'm sure that many schools are doing a great job, many schools, and we're probably hearing from some of them. But I can tell you many are not. This is a systemic problem in Seabrook and in other schools, and I will name Seabrook. It involves hitting, kicking, and other physical aggression. You brought up private right of action. I'm going to think that was not in the law a few years ago. That was changed, it was added. But prior to that, I would think that the mother in Manchester, whose daughter was thrown down the stairs and ended up in the hospital, would have liked that to be in the law. Because when she sued, she lost because there wasn't in the law. So I would suggest keeping it there. At public hearings where parents explain why they have withdrawn the children from public schools, bullying is a common reoccurring theme. Go back and watch the hearings if you're not familiar with them. So on the school choice legislation that comes before you, many parents will tell you, and I've seen them, I've been at those hearings, I pulled my kids out of that school because of the relentless bullying that did not change. So it doesn't change. And there are many of those parents. You can see them on old videos if you want to go watch. I'm working with parents. When I work with parents, my goal is not to have them leave the school. Unfortunately, that's where it normally goes, because if it doesn't stop, they don't have any choice. But my position is always, how do we resolve this? So I want you to know that. While our current anti-bullying law provides a foundation, it falls short in a couple areas. One of the most significant issues is who determines an incident qualifies as bullying. Harassment was brought up earlier. Do you know that these kids can be harassed over and over, reported to the police, and it doesn't qualify as bullying? So they don't report it to the Department of Education. Those numbers are skewed. If you look at those numbers, I can tell you they're not reporting it because it's harassment. That is the biggest thing that I would change in this. Representative Ladd went through his suggestions. Harassment has to be added to this. I can tell you that resource officers have reported this to the police, not just the parents. The resource officer in the school reports it to the police that these kids are being harassed, and it's still not being reported to the Department of Education because it's harassment. So to the average parent or community member, these behaviors clearly meet the definition of bullying. Yet under the current system, the definition is so narrow that incidents go unrecognized or unreported. Say with retaliation, I did see retaliation in here. When Representative Freeman brought this to you, she had read that the sponsor, Representative Noble, had mentioned harassment when she was speaking, but I didn't see it in here, and I went through it, so I just would add that. But retaliation is, kids can get retaliated against, and again, they're not reporting it. This is not being reported. And when we have asked and said we would like this reported to the Department of Education, the answer is no. We will not report it. They will use attorneys to fight parents that simply want it reported. They're not suing them. They're not asking for any money. Just report it to the Department of Education, and the answer is no. Their child was retaliated against. Their child was harassed. Their terms, and it will not be reported. You can go back to the March meeting for at the State Board of Education. It was a public meeting. It made the news out on the Seacoast, where one of the State Board of Education said, we're going to provide you a manifest hardship so you can go to another school. That receiving school is saying, no, we will not take them.
after relentless bullying and all the steps that they went through all the time, they want to go to another school based on manifest hardship, and the school receiving says no. Go watch it. It's absolutely appalling. So I do believe that adding retaliation and harassment to this would be adding harassment to this would be definitely make it much better. In its current form, the law leaves a loophole large enough to allow a significant harm to go unaddressed. By clarifying the definition and strengthening the protections, we can give families confidence that the concerns will be taken seriously and that our schools will remain safe. If you want these families to remain in our public schools, then someone has to stop the actions that are forcing these families to find alternatives. That is my testimony. I do want to go through a couple things. Senator Altshuler brought up cell phones. They're texting each other on Chromebooks that are issued by the school. I've had a nurse tell me that when the kids come to the hospital after trying to commit suicide, that the nurses have to sit there and watch them on their Chromebooks, do their homework, because sometimes they're sitting in the hospital for a week until a bed opens up in the state hospital. The nurses have to watch them. And do you know how many messages are coming through saying, kill yourself? To the student who tried to commit suicide? This is a serious problem. Does another student have to commit suicide before you guys will take this seriously? I don't know if this is a perfect law. I don't know, but something has to be done. Another study committee is not going to help these kids. We need to do something. The comments from Seacoast Online yesterday over this March meeting, if you read through them, people are absolutely appalled that this child has had to be removed, now has to be homeschooled because Hampton Falls won't accept him. What is going to be done? I am sick of hearing the excuses. Excuse after excuse after excuse. We can't do anything with the law. We have to leave it. No, you guys have to do something. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Most schools do a phenomenal job. I know that. But some are failing their kids. I've seen it. I've gone through the process with these parents, and it's appalling. So my position is to fix it, don't kill it. In terms of the cell phones, my gosh, I had a teacher tell me, I mean, like, this makes so much sense. In terms of when you asked that question, this teacher said in her school, and I don't even know if this was in New Hampshire, it was another teacher, I think she was out in New Hampshire. She said, they take the cell phones away and they make the parents pick it up. And you know what? She's like, it works. You make those parents come in every time and pick up that cell phone. And it works. Those kids aren't going to be taken out because mom and dad have to come pick it up. They have to go into the school. That's what she told me. I think it makes sense. I think I've covered everything. I deal with the parents who have to go through this process. And again, I would suggest watching that March meeting at this, and since it's delayed to the next meeting, in the April meeting, I would suggest watching that one because I'll be at that one. But this is not getting resolved at some of our schools. And bravo to those who are resolving these issues. I don't know how it's so difficult to deal with a 10-year-old in a school that is constantly harassing, bullying, torturing these kids. I don't understand why that's so difficult. You are hired to do this. Do your job or find somebody else who can. And you know what? They're not accountable. These administrators are not accountable. I see it. So if you have any questions, I'm sorry this gets me fired up because I get so angry when I deal with these parents and these kids and what they're going through.
Thank you very much. I just want you pointed to page 1,
Yeah.
line 27. This retaliation is included there.
Yeah, so retaliation is in here, and I'm glad to see that, but harassment I did not see in here, and I
You
think
want
it
to
needs
add
to be
harassment,
added.
okay.
Absolutely, because this is the loophole. You know, we can't report it to the DOE because it falls under harassment.
Okay.
And I've had attorneys tell me, Anne Marie, you know, this is how it is. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, because you ask every parent, if your child is being harassed constantly, would you consider that bullying? Every parent's going to tell you, of course it is.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Now, I first preface my question by letting, I'm not familiar with what's going on in Seabrook, but what about this legislation as it was passed by the other chamber? How would that address the Seabrook problem? Because we can pass any law we want, but if a district's not going to act on it or apply it appropriately, the problem's going to still exist. So what does this do that the current state of affairs doesn't address?
So what it does, and again, I would add harassment, it does add retaliation. So I think that is a definite improvement. What it does is when a parent, when their child is being bullied or harassed or whatever you want to call it, it's ridiculous, they have to go through a process. So they'll take it to their school board, and the school board may weigh in, we support the administration fining. And if the parent disagrees, then they take it to a moderator. Then a moderator will come in and decide, does this rise to the level of bullying, and or can we meet the terms of what the parent is asking for? And if that is not resolved, then they take it to the State Board of Education. So I think when you have those outside sources coming in to look at these situations, it is helpful, but that's why there's some loopholes in the current law, and that loophole is harassment and retaliation. So having an outside, or, going to the State Board of Education, it allows that parents to argue their case and get it resolved. And in the case of March's meeting, that parent had to hire an attorney. Now, the school has their taxpayer-funded attorney. That goes along with all of this, to all these meetings, which I have attended. And so the parent is now forced to hire an attorney, but they go through all of those steps. And what's nice is, and it's not a perfect system, it's not going to be perfect, but what's nice is they get an outside view of what happened. And sometimes that State Board of Ed will overturn it, as in the case of the March meeting, which was just a few weeks ago. The State Board overturned that manifestation hardship decision by the school board. I think the school board was 4-1 against the parent. So she went through the process, and through the process, they determined, you know what? Your kid is being harassed or being bullied. We need to allow that child to move to another school district. So I think why you would want something that's good and something that's tangible is so that, you're in a situation where it's not being resolved. It's just not being resolved. And I personally think that's a lack of leadership and a lack of, performing your job. And now they have some outside, somebody on the outside looking in to take a look at that and determine what needs to be done,
Did you have another follow-up?
if that makes sense.
Madam Chair. So I have no issue with adding harassment to this, but under existing policy, I would presume that any form of harassment is a violation of any other code of conduct for the student. So I feel like the school still has the ability to act. I don't know the details of what the allegations were in this case, but if someone's being harassed, whether they fall under the bullying definition, it still must be a violation of some policy at the school, I would hope.
Sure, it is.
But it sounds like
But it's
my point
not
is
being
Seabrook is-
reported. So what happens is it doesn't get reported to the DOE. To be honest with you, some of this is more about reporting numbers. It may not fix the problem, but you're not getting clear numbers. When I go to the Department of Education website and I pull up the school and I look at those numbers, I have screenshotted some of those, which is violence in school or something like that. I've posted it on the page with the parents, and the parents laugh. They're like, "You got to be kidding me. We have had so much violence in the school, and this is the number they're reporting." That's what I mean. If you add that to the law, you're at least going to improve your numbers, or in terms of being honest, being forthright with the public on what's being reported. Right now, I wouldn't trust those numbers when you look at them.
Thank you.
Understand? Okay.
Any other questions? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Banfield, for taking my question. I too get very frustrated by this conversation. As I think you're aware, one of the students in my drama club took her life at 11 years old because of the relentless bullying in Manchester schools. And that's not the only incident, sadly, Manchester has faced with a child taking their own life. There was just a couple of years ago, a child jumped off the overpass
Very
to
aware of
end
it.
the bullying.
Yep.
So I just do not think that the schools are doing what they need to do to protect children here. We've been discussing this. I was in the House first in 2014 where we were doing bullying legislation. 12 years later, have you seen any, because I'm still getting calls, as, you know, people look to me because of the Education Freedom accounts, and they ask me how to apply, what can I do? And I will tell you the top two things that I get are parents whose children are not getting the IEP, the special ed services that they're by law supposed to have. And the other one is bullying. In 12 years, have you seen any decrease in bullying or any, have we done anything that has made this better for the kids so far?
I think you would have to do an independent study really to get the accuracy of that. I think what it boils down to a lot of times is leadership in the school. As I've said, I don't get calls from a lot of parents in a lot of schools because I think that I believe that they are doing a good job. So I don't think this law is going to even impact them. If you're doing your job, if you are resolving the situation, what does the law even do other than put some boundaries in? If 48 hours is too short of a time, I don't think, expanding that would be a problem. If that, I mean, I've seen them do their work. They have that 48 hours, I believe, right now, and they are managing that. But if that needs to be expanded a little bit, if you're pulling up an amendment, I don't think there would be a problem expanding that a little bit, adding some more time. But I think what I have found, and I am going to go back to where I live. I live in SAU 21, so I attend Seabrook meetings from time to time on behalf of parents. And every single year, you get those parents coming in telling that school board, my kids are being bullied. And I see the administrators sitting there, and I'm going, nobody tells them this is what we are doing. Nobody tells the school board. So that, to me, and I have said it because I live there, this is a leadership problem in some of our schools. And so, no, it's not helping in some instances. Is it helping in others? Probably. I think so. I think the private right of action, but I mean, you have to meet gross negligence. I don't even know anybody who's sued the school. I could be missing out on that, but you have to meet that term. And so what they do is they are doing something. They're going to show that they're doing something, but whatever they're doing in some of these schools is not working because the parents have to pull their kids out and send them somewhere else. That to me is a failure. That child should be able to go to that public school in their neighborhood and get an education and not be driven out of their own school.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members?
Follow-up,
Do you have a
if you would.
follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. Would you believe that one of my children went to a school that had no technology was allowed in the building? They, with the sole exception of going to the library and doing a paper there on the school's computer with a teacher present, and that they had, I never heard an instance of bullying, either cyberbullying or otherwise, within that community.
Yeah, it would be helpful. I've opposed the laptops, one-to-one devices ever since it was put in ESSA. ESSA has that technology component to it. I think it is the biggest mistake that we have made. This is how kids send, well, before really cell phones, this is how kids send naked pictures of themselves to each other, opening themselves up for legal action. This is how they bully each other. Show me a study that shows that this has improved. No, as a matter of fact, Sweden, I think, just moved away from, I could be wrong if it's Sweden, but one of those countries moved away from it and said no more technology. It's coming. They're going to get rid of it eventually. Again, lack of leadership. We don't have superintendents in the state saying this is a problem. This doesn't improve our kids' academic knowledge. I'm not saying they don't learn how to use a computer, I'm not dead set against it, but I think the problems outweigh the benefits. And yes, they do cyberbully each other on those devices, and I've seen it, and I've seen screenshots of it, and I've had the nurses confirm that for me. So yeah, I think it's a real problem. I hope that, you guys had to deal with the cell phones. Quite frankly, as I said to one superintendent, why aren't you guys dealing with it? Why does it have to come to the legislature? You guys see the problems with these cell phones, and you don't take the steps to get rid of it? How difficult is it to take the phone, stick it in a principal's office and say, you want the cell phone for your kid, you're coming in every day to pick it up? I mean, I'm sure a parent after a few times is going to be like, I'm done. You don't take that cell phone out when you're at school.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I guess you're all set. Thank you very much.
I do appreciate it. I know that I get a little passionate, a little fired up over this.
Unless there's anybody else who has a burning addition to this thing, we are finished with. The what?
Might not be burning, she said, but
Might not be burning, but I think it's important.
Did you sign up? What?
I didn't sign up to speak. I did sign up on the sheet with my position, but I did not sign up to
Okay.
speak.
Try to make it
I
sort of
apologize. I will be fast.
concentrated.
Thank you, Senator
Okay.
Ward. Good morning. It's still morning. Good morning, members of the Senate Ed Committee. My name is Becky Wilson. I'm the Director of Governmental Relations for the New Hampshire School Boards Association. It's nice to be before you this morning. I know Barrett has been here a number of times this session. We've been tag teaming all the bills. So just a few points that I wanted to try to circle back around. First of all, I certainly would never want to minimize any individual situation that has happened at the school district level regarding bullying. Our concerns around the language in this bill were not meant at all to minimize what some families and some students have been going through. So we certainly don't want to do that. However, this bill in its current form still does not address the concerns that were brought up in the Committee of Conference last year around this exact bill language around the negligence standard. The change in that to saying that it is what care of what a reasonable person would have done is extremely vague. I think especially if you're thinking about all of the people that are covered under this current bill language that would need to be reporting incidences to staff, to school administration. What one person thinks is reasonable or caring may not be what another person thinks. I believe that that was at the end of the day when you had Senate Bill 210 last year, sort of the deal breaker of why the Committee of Conference could not come to agreement was around this change in the negligence language, that it is very vague and it's very difficult to think about a school district full of people in different roles, coaches, bus drivers, et cetera, trying to have their livelihoods on the line based on this language that is extremely difficult to interpret depending on what your experience is and what your role is. So that's our first concern. Secondly, I just wanted to point out, yes, there is a policy that is required around bullying investigation in school districts. It's JICK. Every district has that. It also includes the administrative procedures for investigating bullying at the district level and a copy of the reporting form that districts are using to look at the bullying. To some of the earlier comments, harassment is reported actually to the Department of Education under the Safe Schools Act. That's just a different form. So it is not under the bullying necessarily, although again, these are individual incidences. I think it's very difficult, no different than individual special education issues, to boil things down to be a really general statement about whether it would go to a safe schools or go to a bullying investigation. But there are safe schools violations that are reported under 194F4, let me look. I believe it's 194, that is about the Safe Schools Act. So you can certainly look at that. That talks about violence in schools. Those are just reported in a different way to the department and often do, yes, involve police reporting because those are violent acts of violence or harassment. So those fall under a different standard than the bullying. I also just want to point out bullying as it's identified and defined in New Hampshire law in schools is different than other states' bullying statutes. Our definition has pieces that other states do not have. So when the school administrators are coming up to talk to you about whether or not something is substantiated, a lot of the reason it may be substantiated in one state but not here is because our criteria are different here. So if you want to look at the criteria for bullying in New Hampshire statute, there are very specific things in terms of the pattern or the single incident, what needs to happen. There's 5 criteria. There's also other parts of that bill in terms of what it has to cause as an outcome with students, et cetera. So those are different than they are in other states. So just to be mindful that if you're looking at reports that are not coming from in-state. Lastly, I'll just say, I think it's really important for the committee to consider what this bill language is going to change at the district level. Are you asking, is the belief that the numbers that are going to the Department of Ed is not accurate? Or is it just that those are what's reported to the Department of Ed are founded incidences of bullying? Not every report that comes into the school office. So if I'm a school district administrator at a middle school, for example, I don't know if any of you have had middle schoolers in your lives, a lot of things come to the office that are behavioral of concern. A lot of it is because of the age that those students are and the things that they are growing through that are very natural, but there's a lot of disconcerted things happening during the school day with a bunch of adolescents. Are we now supposed to be tracking every concern that comes to the office of kids being mean to each other, kids saying something to each other, people having a fight, whatever it is that what you want reported under this language to the Department of Ed? Every incident that comes to the office, every incident that is reported, kids on the bus having a hard time? Or do you want what is in this bill, which is substantiated findings of bullying as defined in the law after a bullying investigation has been completed? That is what is currently reported to the department. So that might be where there's some confusion if you're a person looking at the number saying, well, there's no way that that's possibly true. It may be actually true that that is the number of founded bullying incidences after a school district staff has gone through an investigation to determine whether or not there was a bullying issue. It's not going to report every time somebody has said somebody is being bullied. And again, I think you've heard from the previous speakers, people use that term all the time. It's not to minimize that, but it doesn't necessarily meet the legal definition of bullying that we have here in the state. So just because people are saying it doesn't mean that what's happening is okay, doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed somehow at the school district level, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is bullying. And I just want to be really clear about that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 131. Did you want to speak? 3 minutes? 3 minutes? Or less, good.
Thank you for reopening the hearing.
I don't think she actually said that.
You did. And gavel.
We banged it for a lot of reasons.
Public hearing is not closed. We'll have to put in one more person to speak on this bill.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My apologies, Chairwoman Ward, members of the committee. I just really wanted to come forward to answer any additional questions. My name is Bridie Bellamere. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Association of School Principals, retired school principal myself. I'm not going to reiterate the points that you've already heard. I do want to raise a few points for consideration based on some of the testimony that was offered regarding questions about the educators and/or staff required to be a part of the designee process when it comes to the investigative process. So I know the issue of perhaps school guidance counselor was raised. We have social workers, nurses, other behavioral health specialists, kitchen workers, drivers. The requirement certainly is not that they are experts or a direct part of the investigative process. However, schools do spend a significant amount of time training all staff on their ethical responsibility to ensure for student safety and welfare while they're in their carekeeping, regardless of what their role is in schools. And they do have to show due diligence in acting on behalf of those children if they have any concern for their safety or well-being that is brought to them through another party. It is not their responsibility to investigate. That is the responsibility of the administrator or their designee. But I just did want to bring a broader awareness to the fact that it is not just leadership that is responsible for the oversight of the safety and well-being of students. There is quite a trajectory of pieces and parties involved in ensuring for the welfare of students. I do want to just share too, based on some testimony that was shared, first and foremost, certainly it is heart-wrenching that any student would feel that they did not have any other alternative but to take a drastic course of action to end their lives. That is tragedy that none of us ever want to hear, and certainly no family should ever have to experience. As a retired principal myself, I can tell you, unfortunately, I've been privy to those situations as well at the elementary level. And when we say, how can there be issues of not being able to control an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, students and family units are extremely complex. We need to understand and be mindful that children are coming into our schools, institutions, whatever you want to call them, with a lot of history, a lot of could be physical and or mental health issues that schools might not even be aware of, might not know the best way to support a student and or families if information is not disclosed. Sometimes those issues can also lead to some further complications in schools. This should not be viewed as an institutional issue, a leadership issue. It's really a societal issue that we all have a responsibility to be a part of. We are all equal stakeholders in ensuring for the safety, care, and keeping of our students. And schools absolutely want families to be an equal partner in what that should look like. Lastly, I'll close with, I know a question was raised about have incidences of bullying been reduced in the past decade? It would be interesting to do, the data collection on that, but what I can share is certainly in the state of New Hampshire, but it has been a national movement over about the past 2 decades, that schools have been very diligent in employing other practices such as restorative justice components, advisory councils, MTSSB supports, which our department has done an excellent job of supporting schools and districts around the state, training them on how to implement these models. SEL, I think we saw an outpouring of people from the community, families, schools on why SEL is so important in continuing to integrate those models in our schools, because we are finding that some of these issues, as Becky was so articulate in mentioning, are developmental. And we want to work with students at those developmental stages before they turn into a way of being or an ethical issue that translate into further complex behavioral issues as students grow older and matriculate through middle, high school, et cetera. So thank you. I appreciate you taking my time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from members here? Okay, no questions for you.
Thank you so
very
much.
Okay, do I dare? This concludes the hearing on House Bill 131. Now, we have 2 more bills to get through. And the next one is House Bill 1370. And the prime sponsor is Representative Litchfield.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, Senators. My name is Melissa Litchfield, and I represent the towns of Brentwood, Danville, and Fremont. As the prime sponsor of this bill, I'm actually going to make an odd request of you, and that is to either please kill the bill or to please pass it in its original form. Due to a death in the family, I had missed both the hearing and the executive session. I actually went ahead and I watched them last night, and I was very surprised by what I saw. So the prime sponsor of the original bill that was passed back in 2021 is here. That is Representative Moffett. He could probably speak to this much better than I ever could. I just wanted to share a little bit of basic background with you. In 2021, we just simply passed that we wanted a folder to be kept, a physical folder at the Department of Education, just for best practices regarding gifted and talented children. We did not want them to fall by the wayside. What we had done with this bill, someone had approached me and had asked me to put in this bill and just asked that we update the statute. The statute had said beginning in 22-23 school year, every New Hampshire public school shall submit to the DOE no later than August 1st an annual narrative report detailing policies, programs, and procedures that are in place to identify and accommodate the unique needs of gifted and talented students. It further said if no such policies or programs or procedures exist, the report shall so state. So all that I had done in putting in this new bill was update the date because nothing had been done in the past 3 years. It was kind of a tickler. So let's put this back in. Let's update it to 26, 27. And we tried to simplify it for the schools to say, we took out, if no such policies or programs exist, then they don't have to report it. So we just said, we're just going to simplify this. What happened is a member of the committee put in an amendment that repealed the entire RSA. So that's actually what you have in front of you. You have the bill as amended. And again, I apologize. I own that. I wasn't there for the exec session, like I said, the hearing, and it went on consent through the House. So this is where we're at. So again, I respectfully ask that you either ITL or please go back and pass this in its original form. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Representative Moffett, I know you're here, but you didn't check off whether you want to speak or not. Do you want to speak?
Sure, be happy to. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Mike Moffett, Merrimack District 4, Canterbury and Loudon. So this had its genesis 8 years ago. There was some folks, I was on Education Committee, House Education at the time. There was discussion about gifted and talented. What do we do in New Hampshire? So Jennifer Four, who many of you know, is a researcher. So Jennifer took a lot of time, and compiled a ton, if I can say that, of research on what other states do. And so those of us who looked at her report were shocked because it pretty much looked like New Hampshire is somewhere somewhere around 50th in the country in terms of identifying and supporting gifted and talented students. So I helped to get a measure in, didn't make it through, put it in again, went to interim study. Interim study typically is where bills go to that, but not in this case. The interim study committee looked at Jennifer's research and said, what can we do? So to make it as easy as possible for DOE, this measure, HB 321, which finally made it through, simply said or asked in statute that every district simply report to DOE what they do, if anything, to identify and support gifted students. And most districts, unfortunately, did or do nothing. So most of these messages in the form could be done in an email to DOE, to whatever contact they sent out. I'm reporting for such and such a school. We don't do anything to identify or support gifted and talented students. Some do. So the schools that did do some things, the beauty of that was that, as the prime sponsor said, a best practices folder could be generated online or in tangible form for best practices to be shared and looked at and copied if they work. So I left Education Committee. I didn't track it as closely as I could. And then the measure before you, as it originally came to the House Education Committee, simply was a little small correction in statute. So I had no idea until last night when Representative Litchfield contacted me and said that the committee, for some reason, had gutted and had taken out the whole statute. So here we are, around 50th in the country in terms of identifying, supporting gifted students. And the one mention in this RSA, the one mention that does touch on doing something for gifted and talented students, we're going to take out. So obviously, I hope that you ITL what came before you. It got through on consent. I had no idea. It never occurred to me that this would happen. I didn't know until last night. And that's on us, not on you. But hopefully you can fix that. DOE, Nate Green, Dr. Green spoke at the committee hearing. I talked to him there. He was looking to get someone to work this part-time to look at the data. Now, there's no expectation that DOE analyze or process the data. All they had to do was be a place to report to. If some graduate student or somebody did want to review what came in, that would be up to them. And I checked last night, DOE has a budget, the money associated with DOE is $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion, and I just checked online, how many people work for DOE? It will say 200 to 500. I just checked online, I'm sure we can get a better number than that. But scores, hundreds of people work for a department that has $2.5 billion budget, and they can't, my understanding was that this was an annoyance that this was out there. So we pass a law with a minimal expectation. It's not followed through on, and so now they ask us apparently, take the law away. So obviously, I'll stop there. I think if this does go through, I don't know if the governor would sign it, taking away the one little statute that mentions gifted. If it does go through, it might be a blessing in disguise, because it will tell you that the blowback that will happen when people realize that we're the worst state in the country for gifted and talented, and the one thing we do, we take away. Wow. So anyway, thank you for letting me speak and take questions if there are any.
Questions? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question, and thank you for speaking, because when I saw it, I served with you when you were trying to get this through the first time. And I was very surprised to see the bill come forward as a repeal of it. So I just want to thank you for bringing some clarity to that for me.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, anybody else who wants to speak on House Bill 1370? You do? Okay. Just identify yourself for us.
Absolutely. Good morning. My name's David Harrison. I'm with the Department of Education. I was asked by the Department of Education leadership to come down and let you know that we were in support of the bill as it is. We have requested the removal of the requirement for several years, as we've had insufficient capacity to address the reporting. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? I guess not.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Anyone else? Okay, that closes the hearing on House Bill 1376. 1370. Okay, let's open up the hearing on 1635. And the prime sponsor is Representative Litchfield.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Senate. My name is Representative Melissa Litchfield, and I represent District 32, the towns of Brentwood, Danville, and Fremont. This particular bill before you, it modifies the requirements of suicide prevention education policies in schools. I'd like to begin by saying that I don't disagree that suicide prevention is of the utmost importance. someone had actually come to me and asked me to put this bill in last year. It was someone who actually has a spouse on the school board who is also a physician. And they had stated that what was happening with this training just simply is not in line with what many others are doing for training. For example, this is stricter than what is required of first responders in the state, of physicians in the state. And they were running into a problem at their district level where it was turning away potential volunteers because it was an annual training of 2 hours every year. I do want to state, though, in going back through this, on a personal note, I would say that's a local control issue because it does say that they may apply this to school volunteers or not. So that is a school district policy. I'd like to start by saying that. Districts are still able to do as much training as they would like. Right now, they're required to do 2 hours annually, and within the first 9 months of someone's effective date of hire, they would need to be actually, excuse me, that's not correct. That was the effective date of this bill for everyone. It's just every year, annually. What we've done with this bill is we've changed it to within 30 days of being hired, someone would need this training, which I think is great because they're going to get it right on the onset. And then it just changes it to every 2 years thereafter. Districts are still able to do as much training as they would like. So if they would like to do it annually, they may. If they would like to do it more than 2 hours annually, they may. The feedback that I have received in reaching out to many of the principals and superintendents is that there is limited PD time for training hours. There was also mention of possibly putting into law maybe that the training be diversified. Some of the concerns and complaints were about overtraining. The same training has been given over and over again, and they tend to tune it out. Again, I do believe that's local control. They could choose the training they want, but it has been pointed out. Maybe we could mention some diversification of it. This law is more descriptive or strict for educators, as I mentioned, as compared to the physicians or first responders. It's also one of the strictest across the nation. We don't have any objective statistics at this point in time that is showing that this reduces suicide rates. I would like to say that just maybe we consider training the peers on what to look for versus just the staff at this point in time. So I don't have any issues with the fact that they're doing it 2 hours every year at this point in time. I would like to see at least that within 30 days stay the change that we made. That's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions by committee members? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Chair Ward, and thank you, Representative Litchfield, for taking my questions. It's probably going to end up being two. In your introductory comments, you mentioned that this was more restrictive than training for first responders on suicide prevention.
Yes.
Do you want to clarify that for me?
Actually, if I may defer this question to, we have a representative who is also a first responder, and she's actually going to dive into that quite in depth. But I apologize.
No,
didn't mean to-
I can wait for Representative Dry. We're both first responders. So
Oh, okay, perfect.
I'm interested to hear what Representative Dry has to share on this.
Okay.
Second question, not necessarily a direct follow-up. So in here it says 2 hours. You've crossed out the 2 hours and gone for within 30 days. Are you saying that the 2 hours is too restrictive or too much to be expected for any school district? Instead, you want to put a time frame and say you need to do this within 30 days of, was it the start of the school year?
So it's within 30 days of the school year. I have to tell you that originally when I put in this bill, the every 2 years thereafter, this is on me. I'd honestly thought that we had kept in the 2 hours, but it would be every 2 years. This is not how the bill has passed. It's on me. But I do like that that you do it initially within 30 days. And yes, the goal was every other year should be sufficient. Here's my concern is we're going to have people telling us today that we're having training for the staff, what to look for when it comes to suicide. what are they going to look for? Because I've talked to some of the people directly, and I've said, okay, do you not see the child who is lonely or who is the outsider, or how are we not picking up on this? And then the next thing out of their mouth is, well, actually, we don't know. It could be the student that appears to be popular or athletic or in the arts or with the boyfriend or girlfriend, and they just had the breakup or the one bad grade and they took their life. I don't know how this training annually is going to make a difference in that respect. And like I said, the schools can still do as much or as little as they would like.
What's that?
For now, thank
Okay.
you. Thank
Okay.
you, Representative Litchfield.
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Litchfield, for taking my question. So we serve the same school district, one of the same school districts. Have you taken the Connors Climb training?
I have not taken the Connors Climb training, but I will tell you, I did speak to one of the administrators within our school district about this bill.
Okay, thank you. Have you taken the suicide prevention training provided by NAMI New Hampshire?
I have not.
Okay, thank you.
But I will tell you this, I have a student that had to leave the SAU 16 school district because a bullying problem was not handled, which could have led to a suicide.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Dry?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning. Yes, thank you. For the record, I'm Representative Margaret Dry. I serve Sullivan District 7, towns of Plainfield, Cornish, Newport, Unity, and Charleston. I'm here in favor of this bill. For the record, I am an emergency medical technician, as is my husband, and I'll speak to your business about EMTs in a moment. But I just want to tell you that when the basketball player collapsed on the school gym a couple of weeks ago, his teammates started CPR right away. The AED was in the corner. It was applied right away. It shocked the gentleman 2 times, and by the time my husband and I arrived, he was speaking to us. Everything worked the way it was supposed to. And the point of this is as critical as CPR was to that good outcome. CPR is only a skill that is recertified every other year. And that brings us to this bill, which is taking an annual 2-year suicide prevention training and making it once every 2 years. The bill, as it's written, takes new hires and makes them, doesn't let them slip through the net because they have to do it within 30 days of being hired. But then they would get into the once every 2 years cycle that is required, is offered by this bill. Is suicide prevention training valuable? Absolutely it is. But there are a lot of other trainings that we do every other year that are valuable too, like sexual harassment reporting and prevention training, like abuse, neglect, and mandatory reporting training, like restraint and seclusion training, like EpiPen training, like Section 4 of 504 training, like homeless liaison training, like student discipline and due process training. These are all important training processes that schools go through, but just like CPR training, which all of its history has been every other year, these are every other year trainings. And the list of required trainings also has a whole bunch that are offered as needed that are also important. New Hampshire Educators Code of Conduct and Code of Ethics training, and Title IX investigation training, and athletic coach training, and reading and interpretation of criminal history and records check training. These are all as needed. The principal who gave me the list of required trainings, I asked her, what would happen if this bill passes and it's not required to be 2 years every year, but rather you had the option of just doing it every other year? And she said, they usually do the online training so they can check it off, say the box has been checked, and get the certificate. She said, but if we could do that to fulfill the obligations, but that would open up to them a lot more opportunity for the second year. I mean, there was no doubt in her mind that she was going to do something yearly, but she wouldn't have to be required to be in what she felt like was a kind of a box, and that they could explore other things. If you take away the 2-hour timing, that also gives you a chance to give a really good 1-hour presentation, but not have to meet the 2-hour limitation there. The public health official that I talked to about this, who I also thought might want it every year, recognized the part about it has to be good training. If it's the same thing every year, which unfortunately, as EMTs, we are getting, which is what made me sign on to this right away, I don't really want to watch next year's training on this because I know it by heart now, and it doesn't open us up too much else. It takes, in EMTs, it takes a lot of training out of a tight schedule in a year. Volunteer squads don't have a lot of time to offer for that. And one meeting is an important meeting. That's another bill. But that drove me to look at this one. And I do see that many, many important trainings have been every other year and as needed. And I think this gives a lot of control to a school, especially considering what their situation is with mental health. They may want more, they may want less, they might want better, they might want different. This gives, at least keeps the requirement and actually gives some latitude to schools. And finally, I just want to close with this. Nothing in this bill, nothing prevents a district from doing this training every year. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Questions? Senator Prentice? Okay, you could take care of Moffett.
She's an EMT.
Always on duty.
Yeah,
I know.
We have an EMT on board.
I got it covered. Okay, thank you
Why
very
don't
much.
Wait a second. I think that Senator Prentice had a question earlier. No, I think my question. You have your question, I will answer it. Okay, I think with that, we don't have any questions for
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Holly Stevens.
Chair Ward and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Holly Stevens, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at NAMI, New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm here today to speak in opposition to House Bill 1635, which would change the existing requirement of suicide prevention training for school personnel. I usually spout statistics about suicide to you during my testimony, but I'm not going to do that today. The statistics are in my written testimony, and you can take your time to read that at your leisure. Last week, during the Suicide Prevention Council Policy Subcommittee meeting, an educator from a New Hampshire school district mentioned that she felt yearly training was redundant because they bake suicide prevention and postvention into their overarching training scheme. However, she acknowledged that not all schools are like hers, and that there are some schools that do the state-required 2-hour training and otherwise do not talk about suicide. It is these schools that we're concerned about and where it's crucially important to have a requirement for yearly training. It's not enough just to recognize the signs and symptoms of suicidality. Educators must feel comfortable and confident in discussing these concerns with a student when they see the signs. This past weekend, I saw a good friend who works as a guidance counselor in a New Hampshire high school. I asked her what she thought about the suicide prevention training going to every 2 years and having an undefined amount in the state of law. Her eyes got very wide and she said, absolutely not. She said that given the time that school personnel spend with students, they are the ones who recognize when a student is struggling. She said that despite the protocol that requires school personnel to connect the student to guidance if they see any signs or symptoms of suicide, she often will check her email at the end of the day only to discover an email outlining concerns about a student displaying signs and symptoms of suicide. The problem is that student is already on the bus. This happens not because the teachers don't know the signs and symptoms and the protocols that are in place, but because they are not comfortable talking with the students about what they are seeing and asking if they would like to talk with someone in guidance about how they are feeling. This yearly training is important so that school personnel feel more comfortable and confident in talking to students about suicide. It's a tough subject. In addition to my written testimony, I have included the written testimony of a young woman who attributes her being here today to a teacher seeing the signs of her struggle with suicidal ideation, pulling her aside, having a conversation with her, and getting her connected to the help she needed. I encourage you to read her testimony in advance of voting on this bill. We need suicide prevention to become second nature to all school personnel so that they not only recognize the signs and symptoms, but they also feel comfortable and confident having tough conversations when they see the signs of a student struggling. This hearing is being held on the heels of the loss of a New Hampshire youth, all while suicidal thoughts and behaviors are still elevated for New Hampshire's young people. Now is not the time to reduce suicide prevention training for school personnel. Therefore, NAMI New Hampshire does oppose this bill today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. In your written testimony on the first page in the third paragraph, you say the existing law already requires the districts to look at, consider, and train on suicide prevention every year. And this says every 2 years. If we change this to say every year, would you oppose that?
Well, the existing law is every year, and the bill that's before you today is to change existing law from every year to every other year. And then we do have a concern about the fact that the 2 hours has been dropped out. The way that the bill reads, somebody could give somebody a little quiz to take, and if they pass that quiz in 5 minutes, they've checked the box because there's no specific time frame of requirement anymore. So no, we would not be opposed to keeping it a year, every year.
Follow-up?
But if we made it 1 year, but you want us to keep the, what if we made it 1 hour every, I mean, I'm just asking, is there anything in this, or you think just the existing law is the way to go?
I know that, so before this hearing, we asked our data person to look into research about what was best practices for suicide training in schools. There isn't any. We cannot find data on that. So is an hour, or 2 hours? I don't know, but I don't think that 2 hours every year is that much of a commitment. I did include some handouts on trainings for teachers as well as mental health professionals with suicide prevention, but we can't find any specific standard.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward. Thank you, Holly. Would you believe that suicide between the ages of 10 and 24 is the second leading cause of death in the state of New Hampshire?
And between the ages of 10 and 14 in the state of New Hampshire, it's the first leading cause of death.
Okay. Follow-up? So in talking about every year versus every other year and a specific number of hours, I want to get your impression, Holly, on the thought of maybe setting aside the number of hours and focusing on the specific topics or areas that are in here, because I've seen that to be something. First of all, I'll talk about every year versus every other year, but let's just talk about the content. So warning signs, suicide risk factors, warning signs, protective factors, response procedures, referrals, post-intervention, and resources available within the school and the community. Whether it's done in an hour or done in 2 hours, what would you weigh the importance of delivering the subject matter versus the amount of time that it happens in?
I think I would weigh the proficiency of the teachers to be able to have those tough conversations. I think that it really boils down to that there might be some subjects that are more tuned in to teaching that skill. And I think that that's the most important skill, is recognizing the signs and symptoms and then being able to actually have that tough conversation. Because talking about suicide is not easy. It's not the same as CPR. When somebody sees somebody go down, there's no stigma around having a heart attack. There is stigma around mental illness, and it's a scary topic, and people don't like talking about it. So I think, to your point, looking at the specific topics that are taught might be a good idea.
And thank you. Chair Ward, just one more.
One more?
Follow-up. Yes, follow-up, thanks. Every year versus every other year, given the suicide rates and that we actually skew higher than the national average has seen a drop, except New Hampshire still skews higher in the youth area. Do you think that the presence of the conversation annually, whether it happens within 30 days or 60 days, would be the priority?
I think for now, it's extremely important. This law was only passed within the last 5 years, I believe. I think Jenny O'Higgins is here, and I think she might know the exact year that it was passed. But since then, we've had COVID. COVID skewed the numbers up for our youth. And we are just now from 2021 to 2023, we saw a small dip in suicidality in schools, and I've provided you the YRBS data that you can look at. Until we get these numbers down, I think yearly training is extremely important so that teachers can be proficient in talking to students about suicide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Holly. Chair Ward, I'm all set for now.
Do you ever involve the parents in some of these lectures, discussions? But it seems to me that the parents also need to know something about what to watch for so they can work with the teachers in school.
As an organization, we provide training to a vast majority of folks. I don't know if the schools themselves involve parents when they're doing their trainings. That's not something that I could speak to, but I could certainly find out.
No, I was just thinking, I remember a couple of years ago when we talked about adding suicide prevention instruction to teachers, that there was one more thing that they had to learn. I remember that very well, and we reiterated all the different kinds of lectures and workshops that you have to attend. There's hardly any time left to teach. So this is obviously very important, and I do think that it could be done in a sort of a lecture form to review, and if something happens, something new comes up, to keep them up to date of what's happening worldwide, or at least in your area, so that you can sort of see what is going on and what likely could happen and what to watch for in the kids. So.
Was that a question?
No, it's a comment
Okay.
of what needs to be done, that you raise the awareness of both teachers, and I think particularly parents need to be involved also. And I don't know if your organization have meetings or lectures or workshops for parents so they know what to look for.
We have trainings for individuals across the spectrum, parents, just citizens, as well as we go into schools. So we do a lot of suicide prevention training throughout the country and actually across the world. We've been to different countries as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jenny O'Higgins.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jenny O'Higgins. I'm the Legislative Liaison for Behavioral Health at DHHS, and you all see me quite often on many different things. In particular, to talk about suicide prevention today, I did want to let you know that in my role in DHHS, I do oversee the statewide suicide prevention coordinator for New Hampshire. And I've also been a QPR trainer for 14 years. So that is in national evidence-based suicide prevention training. So I'm here today just to provide some context and information about suicide prevention in the state of New Hampshire. You've already heard that this is a major public health issue. The first leading cause of death for ages 10 to 14 in New Hampshire. Nationally, the #1 cause of death for people that young is unintentional injury, things like car accidents and drowning. In New Hampshire, that is suicide for ages 10 to 14. It is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 34. So youth and young adults in particular, this is the #1 and #2 cause of death in our state. We've already heard even from the sponsor how critically important this is, from Representative Dry, how critically important this training is, from NAMI. And so I don't think there's any argument about the critical importance of suicide prevention and how we need to be doing that. I did just want to talk a little bit about the data. It shows a transition from adolescence to young adulthood as a particularly vulnerable period, and youth and young adults being disproportionately affected by suicide in our state. And this is the exact population that's reached by school-based prevention. You know, youth and children and teens spend most of their time in schools, and oftentimes school personnel, teachers, counselors, coaches, other staff are the very first people to notice warning signs. And students also frequently disclose suicidal thoughts to a trusted staff or through their writing, their art, their behaviors. You'll see in the hallway out here the Magnify Voices program displayed from last year, which is a way that youth in New Hampshire are making art to talk about their mental health. And sometimes that comes out in schoolwork, and then we're able to intervene. But as someone who started my career working with kids and has worked with youth for a number of years, when a young person's in crisis, it can be really scary for adults too, because we just are so nervous that something's going to happen to them. And so repetitive training is on purpose, just like a CPR, where we do the same training every single year. We do it so that we can react in the moment. And this is a similar kind of thing, that the training is shown to allow us to increase our knowledge and confidence, but just be more likely to intervene. It gives us the courage and the language to know what to do when a young person comes to us. There have been very recent systematic reviews of universal school-based trainings that have shown this significant improvement in interventions. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and then the piece around the actual bill changes. So most of our trainings in New Hampshire are at least 2 hours. Those national evidence-based trainings are at least 2 hours, so it'd be tough to meet the requirement. It would be tough to get an evidence-based suicide prevention training that's less than 2 hours long, so the change of the actual amount of hours. And then you've heard a little bit about the idea that you could do something very brief and kind of check the box here. And we want to make sure that it is in best practice and that people are getting really good information. And then the other pieces around the change from every other year to every year. So I know we've heard that we do, you know, things like CPR that are just so critical as well every other year. But we also do have the data really showing this very high number of kids that need this intervention. So the number of kids that experience a cardiac arrest nationally outside of a hospital setting is approximately 7,000 young people. It's 15 times that are seen in an emergency department for self-inflicted injury. It's over 157,000 children that are seen in an emergency department for a self-inflicted injury. So the idea that we're liking this CPR, the population we're talking about of young people, they're so much more likely to experience suicidal ideation than cardiac arrest. So I wish that we were in a moment in time in New Hampshire where this training was not needed every year and where our numbers were stable and our risk was low, but that's not true for New Hampshire. This is a moment in time where 2 hours is the minimum, not the goal, and where every other year, you know, every 2 years is just too long to wait. So thinking about it as those, with that data in mind, I think is really critically important in making this decision, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Senator Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. On a lighter subject, we were just saying your name should be an Irish song.
Oh, my maiden name is O'Leary, so O'Leary O'Higgins is even more fun.
We're going to get on that. No, thank you for taking my question. So we heard some testimony saying that this, in New Hampshire, these numbers have actually gone up. Also that we've been doing, this bill originally went in 5 years ago. Do we need to reevaluate what we're actually doing? Because those two things don't tell a story of us making a difference here with what we're doing. So should we be looking at doing something different? Maybe what we're doing every year isn't the right thing to do, or can you give me some insight on that?
Yeah, great question. So I think the bill did go into effect about 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact time that it passed, but we've actually seen slight reductions in suicide fatality in New Hampshire. It's just that we have to look at trend data over time for a long period of time before we can ever sort of take our foot off the gas in that prevention intervention area, because we're a small state, so our numbers are somewhat low. And so the statistical significance of, is that a reduction? It really matters that we're looking at it for a length of time. So we're actually trending in the right direction in those last 5 years. So that's a good sign that maybe this prevention, I can't make a jump, causation there, that the training is what's causing this. It's a number of factors, but we are moving in the right direction. So I think the choice to reduce any of this would be, potentially detrimental. But I think that the trends over time are what we need to look at. But we have not seen an increase. We have seen a slight decrease. We just don't know whether or not it's on track to remain decreasing.
Okay, thank you.
Another thing? Would you prefer that we go back to 1 hour every year, 2 hours every year?
Yes, just the law as it stands today is sufficient for this moment in time. So it's just the changes to the law that are concerning.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else in here wanting to speak on this particular bill? House Bill 1635? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing. You don't want to go into executive session? We'll do this.
I will make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Be the two first ones
Yeah.
for today.
I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass on HB 1795 FN.
I'd second that.
All those in favor? 1795, okay. Any discussion on 1795?
I thought the testimony, Senator Ward, I think that especially Steve Appleby was able to clarify why this is necessary. Checks as they are right now, even though they're FBI compliant, are just a point in time. And if anything happens between that point in time and the length of their history of employment, unless they move to another district, it's not reported. And we are not a state that has a system that will actually, as an offense, or if somebody is charged or they are found guilty, would automatically, it's called being, it's a wrap back policy. We don't have that, so we don't have any knowledge. Somebody could be in a school system with something pretty significant in their record that we wouldn't know until they changed. So this is a great protection for New Hampshire children. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All those in favor of OTP?
Aye.
Aye, that's 4-0. Vote on consent?
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
4-0.
And I'd be happy to take it out, Senator Ward.
Prentice will take it up.
Prentice will take
Prentice
it
will
out. We're going to a ball game.
How about, this is
1818.
1818?
I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass on House Bill 1818 FN.
10 years, school year, okay.
And I'd like to speak, oh, I need a second.
I'll second.
Do I have a motion for 1818?
Ought to pass, and we
Ought
got a
to pass.
second by Abbas. I'd like to speak to the motion.
Who is the second?
Abbott.
Senator Abbott.
Okay. Discussion?
Yeah, so I just think this makes sense. We're seeing schools having to make decisions about, because of, a declining enrollment that we have in our schools and the cost of the buildings that we're still supporting. I think it makes sense, so. More
Makes a lot
planning
of
is better.
sense. You want to add anything?
I think my colleague said it better than I could have.
Elegantly.
Yes, yes, so eloquently.
Okay, all those in favor of OTP?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0.
Wait.
I'll get to clarity. I'm struggling with the discussion of the testimony on the fiscal note part of it, but I can get clarity after that.
So if I may,
Do we want to draw back from the vote so we can, Senator Ward, can we just step back from the vote? So we're in voting
Yeah.
mode so that I can get clarity on the fiscal note, because I heard the sponsor say,
There
all the
was-
reasons we need to do this, but there's not going to be a fiscal note that goes with it.
There was another piece, if I understand that correctly, there's another piece that was removed that had the fiscal note attached that we no longer need the fiscal note.
For the new fund to, like a school liaison fund for the consolidation of schools within a district. That was totally eliminated, and therefore it just flew by in the House, and of course finance squeezed it off, and so here you've got it right now. These reports are being submitted by districts as is, they're recommended, it's only saying you shall, but you shall also include the buildings which you may want to consolidate. If there's costs associated, but that would be something that the district has to figure out, what are their costs? We're trying to find out what we need budget.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion for the bill?
Senator Ward, can you just turn on your microphone?
So we've got an
We have
ought to
a mo-
pass with a second by Abbott.
Up to pass, and do we have a second on it?
Second.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. Just,
I just needed that clarity.
it's hard to see people.
I
in
know,
the-
I
I
keep
know.
trying to.
Straight line.
It's okay. I usually do this.
Okay. So, who is in favor of OTP?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, that's 4-0,
And I
okay.
have everybody raising
And
their hands.
I will make a motion of consent.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second, all those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye, that's
Aye.
4-0. And, do you want to take it out, Sullivan?
Sure.
Okay,
Sullivan will take it out.
Sullivan will take it out. Those are the two that I thought of, I had,
Can we have a discussion on HB 1370 and see if people are comfortable voting or not?
1370.
That is the gifted students bill, gifted and talented students. I would be comfortable making a motion of ITL on this.
That's sort of my,
Let the
the
current law
sense that
stand.
I got.
I'd correct. yeah.
Okay,
And-
so-
And the sponsor said.
So have a
given that the
motion of ITL on
So we're just
1370.
we're just having the discussion on, do you have an official motion yet?
I don't, I just want to make sure we're all
Yeah,
comfortable voting.
yeah, and given the sponsor's testimony that, you know, one or the other being ITL or being replaced to the original version, I'm comfortable doing, you know, supporting this.
I have a
Senator
motion-
Abbas?
Motion on ATL.
You want me to make the motion?
No, I'm asking if you're comfortable going into voting mode, if you have anything else to say.
I'm comfortable. I think the three of you tipped your hand very well.
We'll just,
I didn't know
he's
we
letting us
couldn't tip
carry
our
the whole
hand.
load today. All right, so I'd like to make a motion of ITL on House Bill 1370.
I'll second that. We've had discussion already, I think.
Pretty much, yep.
Do we need more discussion?
I don't
Oh,
think so.
no, no.
Okay. All those in favor of ITL?
Aye.
1370. That's 4-0.
Make a motion of consent.
Consent? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we need a second on that, though.
You have a second, Senator.
I can feel
Prentice.
Trevor looking at me. Yes, we need a second. on
Give it. 4-0.
Abbas is the second.
Who wants to take it out?
Oh,
Do you want to take it out?
I'll take it out.
Okay.
I'm fine not being second,
Okay.
whatever. I'll take, but I'll,
Prentice
You,
will-
he got you a second,
Prentice will
sorry.
take it out.
wherever I end up, that's fine, and I'm happy to take this out. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. I think that's it for today.
So now I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second,
All those in favor of coming out of executive session?
both hands. Aye.
We're out of executive session.
Now we have to get working on that song. Now Jenny O'Leary O'Higgins.
We have to adjourn for the day?
Madam Chair, do we need to adjourn for the day?
We are gonna adjourn for the day. I need a motion to adjourn. We are adjourning. All those
Whatever
in
they
favor of
pay you.
adjourning?
It's not enough.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Did you figure out what happened down?